It wasn't guided by a simple hunch. Instead, it settled in my chest as a cold, unshakable certainty. After that strange and unusually quiet meeting involving my father, Richard, alongside my sister, Angela, something inside me registered that something was deeply wrong. That feeling is what pulled me into the secure archives at Archer Digital Ventures, a place I hadn't needed to set foot in 4 years. There, tucked away as if someone hoped it would never be found, I stumbled across a single black folder with no label and no project code. My hands were shaking the moment I opened it. What I found wasn't a draft or some casual proposal. It was a finalized, notarized legal document stating that 100% of the company's voting shares, along with the official title of Chief Executive Officer, were being transferred to Angela. My name didn't appear in it at all. Not once, as if 10 years of my life had simply evaporated. I received absolutely nothing. Where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know who's part of our community. That betrayal didn't merely sting, it felt impossible. And it felt impossible because for 10 years, I wasn't only an employee, I was the successor. My name is Camille. I'm 32 years old, and for a full decade, I served as the head of strategy and operations at Archer Digital Ventures. Though it sounded like a fancy title, what it really meant was that I was the one who ensured everything worked. I built the entire analytics system from scratch, the system that tracked consumer data, optimized our ad spends, and ultimately doubled our revenue in 3 years. I was also the one who missed my best friend's wedding. I sat in my car in the church parking lot wearing my bridesmaid dress while taking a call with a client because my father, Richard, had forgotten the meeting altogether. I closed the deal but missed the ceremony. I sacrificed my 20s for that company. My personal life felt like a graveyard full of "I'm sorry, I have to work" texts. I didn't take vacations. I didn't date. I just worked. And I did all of it because of the promise my father, Richard, made again and again. "One day, this will all be yours, Camille," he would tell me, putting his arm around me whenever I landed a significant account. "You've got the head for it. You're the real deal." I believed him. That promise fueled my life. It became my entire identity. People ask why I stayed, why I accepted the long hours and the holidays spent alone. But it wasn't only loyalty, it was a psychological trap. When you're the survivor, the one holding the family business together, your sacrifice becomes your identity. You're no longer just an employee. You become the load-bearing wall propping up the whole structure. You learn to wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. You tell yourself that someday, all the sacrifice will be seen and appreciated. That belief becomes an invisible chain. You stop asking yourself whether you even want to be there. You only think about the fact that you're needed. And the people who benefit from your sacrifice are always more than willing to let you keep carrying the weight. I wasn't just working for a company. I was working for a man who looked me in the eye, called me his daughter, and promised me a future, all while writing the paperwork to give that future to someone else. Then my sister Angela returned home. She hadn't attended a family dinner in years. First, she'd been finding herself in Bali, then building her personal brand in New York. She was 29, charismatic, beautiful, and had an Instagram following that my father, Richard, found absolutely fascinating. I, on the other hand, had spreadsheets. Richard was instantly captivated. Within a week of her return, he called a company-wide meeting and announced that Angela would be the new CEO. Effective immediately, he claimed she had a fresh perspective Archer Digital desperately needed. Her work began instantly. She changed the company's official font to something more playful, spent 2 days deciding on a new color palette for the break room, posted selfies in the conference room with the hashtag #GERBoss, and left by 4 p.m. every day. My data-driven strategies, the ones I spent months developing, were suddenly deemed too rigid. My projections were pushed aside for Angela's creative instincts and vibes. I watched my father, a man who built his entire business on diligence and numbers, dissolve into admiration for her buzzwords. It's easy to ask why he was so blind, why he would hand his legacy to someone so inexperienced. But it wasn't blindness, it was a choice. It was the normalization of cruelty that grows inside certain families. They assign roles early. The golden child who can do no wrong and embodies all the family's hopes. And the scapegoat, or in my situation, the workhorse. My whole life, I was competent, so I received the workload. Angela was charming, so she received the praise. My father didn't just prefer Angela. He needed her to be the brilliant one, because if she was the creative genius, he could justify overlooking my competence. And he needed me to remain the reliable workhorse, the one who quietly kept everything running without complaint. He wasn't simply blind. He was maintaining the system he built. I was expected to accept all this, to keep my head down, run the numbers, and watch Angela run the company into the ground. But then I remembered the Odyssey project. That campaign was my baby, an $11 million renewal for our biggest client, Susan. I had spent 6 months building that pitch. It was entirely data-driven, a complete overhaul of her global marketing. I'd finished it 2 months earlier, but Richard kept delaying the presentation. "Susan's not ready yet," he said. "Let's wait." Now I realized he wasn't waiting for Susan. He was waiting for Angela. I went into the server and found it, my pitch deck, my data, my entire strategy with a new line at the bottom of the cover slide. Presented by Angela, CEO. He was giving her my work. He was letting her steal my biggest idea and present it as her own. Standing in the cold silence of the archive room with the black folder in my hands, I didn't cry or yell. The version of me who still believed in my father's promises had disappeared. The new, colder version of me simply acted. I walked straight out of the office past the front desk without saying goodbye. I drove home in complete silence. That night, at exactly 11:03 p.m., I sat at my computer, opened my email, typed the addresses of my father, my sister, and Wendy from HR. The subject line read, "Resignation." The body contained only 2 lines. "This email serves as my immediate and final notice of resignation from Archer Digital Ventures. My access card and company laptop will be on my desk by morning." I hit send and turned off my phone. A few days passed quietly. I just breathed. Then the panic I expected finally arrived. When I turned my phone back on, it exploded with missed calls. My mother, Karen, left tearful, pleading voicemails. "Camille, you're tearing the family apart. Call me. Your father is just call me." Angela sent one text. "You are being so dramatic. You're really going to throw a tantrum just because Dad finally gave me a real role? You're overreacting." From my father, Richard, nothing, not one word. He was too proud to beg, and assumed I would crawl back. I ignored everything. I deleted the voicemails. I blocked Angela's number. Then Wendy from HR called. I answered. "Camille," she said, sounding relieved. "Thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Wendy, just unemployed." She sighed. "Listen, I'm not supposed to say this, but they're moving forward with the Odyssey pitch this Friday. Angela Ishii's presenting it as her own." "I know," I replied. "The thing is," Wendy lowered her voice, "she doesn't understand the data. She's been asking the analysts to make the slides prettier and to simplify the numbers. She thinks the 11 million budget is a suggestion. She's going to crash and burn." "Camille, is that what you want?" I thought about it, about the client, Susan, who lived and breathed data. I remembered our private lunch 3 months earlier. She'd been frustrated with my father's vague big picture talk. And in a moment of quiet confidence, I had off the record shown her my preliminary data models for the Odyssey project. I remembered her studying my analytics and giving a small, knowing smile. "This," she said, "is the kind of thinking I've been waiting for." She already knew the core idea was mine. She knew my mind, my numbers. "Wendy," I finally said, "I'm not doing anything." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not interfering. I'm not saving her. I'm not saving him." A cold wave of calm settled over me. She wants to be CEO. Then let her be CEO. I didn't need to build a trap. My father and sister had already built one, and Angela was walking straight into it. I didn't have to be in the boardroom on Friday. I could picture the entire scene perfectly. I knew Angela, I knew Susan, and I knew my own data. Angela would walk in glowing with effortless confidence, probably wearing some designer outfit that cost more than my first car. She'd charm the room, greeting everyone by their first name. And she wouldn't simply present the Odyssey project, she would perform it. The lights would dim, and my slides, my data, my analytics, and my strategy would appear on the screen, repackaged in her trendy new sans serif font. She'd sprinkle in words like synergy, brand resonance, and creative disruption. She'd talk about the campaign's feeling, the vibe. She'd glide right past the complex data models, the algorithmic budget allocations, and the consumer behavior forecasts, treating them like footnotes she had to survive on her way to the pretty pictures. What she didn't understand was that for Susan, the data was the pretty picture. I can see Susan sitting at the head of the table, perfectly still, listening patiently. Susan, a CEO in her 60s who built her entire empire on numbers, not on hashtags. When Angela finished her performance, Susan would lean forward, her smile thin. "Impressive, creative, Angela. But can you walk me through slide 47 again? The allocation model. Your data suggests a 15% budget shift to programmatic display in Q3. But your projected ROI doesn't align with the consumer acquisition cost. Can you explain the dataset you used to justify that specific percentage? And that's when it would happen. The silence, the blank. Panicked look in Angela's eyes as she frantically tried to find the slide. She wouldn't have an answer. She didn't know what that data meant. She only knew it looked convincing. I can picture her fumbling, trying to pivot, maybe even laughing lightly. Well, Susan, the real value here isn't just the hard numbers. It's the emotional synergy we're creating. It's about the holistic brand feel. But Susan wouldn't be listening. She'd be looking right at Angela, her expression unchanging but her eyes sharp. Susan knew. She knew because I had secretly shown her my initial data models. Months ago, in a quiet strategy session she'd requested off the books. She knew the mind that built that strategy, and she knew the person standing in front of her trying to pass it off as her own was a fraud. Angela's self-destruction wasn't a loud explosion. It wasn't a dramatic breakdown. It was the cold, terrifying silence of incompetence being exposed. It was the moment my father, who I'm sure was sitting in the back of the room, beaming with pride, realized his new CEO couldn't answer a single basic question about the 11 million campaign she was supposedly leading. It was the moment the fresh perspective was revealed to be nothing but empty space. It was Friday afternoon. I was in my apartment, folding sweaters into a cardboard box. I was packing. My personal phone rang, the one I never used for work. I looked at the screen. Susan, I answered. Camille. Susan, here. I waited. That was, she paused, searching for the word. A remarkable presentation. I stayed silent. Your sister's creative direction, Susan continued, her voice flat and professional, was not what we discussed. More importantly, she was incapable of explaining a single data point from her own deck. She couldn't even identify the basic acquisition cost model you and I discussed months ago. I looked at a stack of books I needed to pack. I felt nothing, just quiet. We are withdrawing the 11 million Odyssey contract effective immediately, Susan said. I am only telling you this as the project's originator because I want to be clear. We will not be partnering with Archer Digital unless you are the one leading the account. Goodbye, Camille. She hung up. I put the phone down and placed a book into the box. An hour later, my phone rang again. My father, I answered. Camille, what did you do? He wasn't asking. He was yelling. The panic in his voice was so thick I could barely understand him. Susan pulled the contract. The whole thing, $11 million. You have to come back. You have to fix this now. I paused, listening to his frantic breathing. I'm not the coup father, I said, my voice perfectly calm. Angela is the CEO. Let your CEO handle it. I hung up. My phone immediately lit up again. My mother, Karen. I let it ring. A text message came through. It was Angela. You set me up. You fed me to the wolves. This is your fault. You ruined everything. My thumb hovered over the message. Then I just blocked her number. I blocked my mother's. I blocked my father's. I went back to packing. A full week went by. Nothing, just silence. I heard through Wendy, the HR manager, that the office was in chaos. 2 of the senior data analysts had quit. Clients were calling, demanding answers about the Odyssey project fallout. The company was bleeding, and the new CEO had no idea how to stop it. Then, on the 8th day, an email appeared in my personal inbox. It was from my father. Just 3 words. What do you want? I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my attorney. My lawyer replied to him. A legal meeting tomorrow. Des Unches de Meugia. I walked into that conference room and, for the first time in my life, my father looked small. He was sitting next to his lawyer, his shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. Angela wasn't there. He knew she couldn't be. Camille, he started, his voice heavy. I cut him off. Here are the terms, I said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. 50% equity transferred to my name. The Chief Operating Officer title, effective immediately. Full strategic control over all accounts, including Odyssey, and Angela is demoted to a non-strategic creative role, reporting to my new head of strategy. She will not have any client contact or decision-making power. My father's lawyer read it and just sighed. Richard looked at the paper, then at me. 50%. That's the price, I said. He knew he had no choice. The company he built was days from insolvency. He nodded slowly. Agreed. When I walked back into the Archer Digital office, I didn't feel a rush of victory. I didn't feel like I'd won a war. I just felt purpose. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge is about the past, about punishing what's already broken. This was about justice. And true justice is about the future. It's the justice of the sewer. It's not about burning the field down. It's about pulling the weeds so you can finally plant something real. My first act as coup wasn't firing people, it was rebuilding. I spent the morning restructuring the data team, and I called the 2 analysts who had quit. I offered them a raise, and I told them about the new leadership. They were back by lunch, and that afternoon, I sat down at my new desk, the one in the corner office, and I called Susan. Susan, it's Camille Morgan. I heard her smile through the phone. Camille, I was wondering if I'd hear from you. I'm sorry about the confusion last week, I said. There's been a change in management. I'm the new coup, and I have 50% equity. Susan was quiet for a moment. Well, she said, that changes things. Send me the new proposal. I'll review it tonight. I'll do one better, I said, pulling up my original files. I'm sending you the real Odyssey pitch right now, the one you were supposed to see. I hung up the phone. My father, my sister, they thought my value was something they could give me, like a title or a percentage. They thought they could just hand it to Angela, but my value was never theirs to give. It was my competence. It was the work I had done, the systems I had built, the data I understood. They didn't see my worth until I took it away. They say you can't choose your family. Maybe that's true, but you can choose what you're willing to accept from them. You can't let them define your worth. You have to define it for yourself. And then you have to demand they respect